The fluorescent lights of the hotel conference room buzzed overhead like trapped insects, each flicker sending a fresh wave of exhaustion through my already fatigued mind. I pressed my fingers against my temples, willing away the headache that had been building since 6:01 a.m. 12 hours of consecutive translation work, and the business summit was still going strong. My voice felt raw, my brain foggy from switching between English, Italian, and French without pause. 5-minute break, announced the moderator, and I nearly wept with relief. I grabbed my water bottle and slipped out of the main hall, desperate for a moment of silence away from the corporate jargon and forced networking smiles. The hotel corridor stretched before me, mercifully empty and quiet. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I made my way toward the restroom, passing closed doors bearing names of various breakout sessions and private meetings. That's when I heard it. Voices drifting from a partially open door about 20 feet ahead, raised voices, speaking rapid Italian with a northern accent I recognized instantly. Milanese, probably. Years of studying linguistics at Boston University had trained my ear to catch regional variations, even when I wasn't actively trying to listen. I should have kept walking. Should have minded my own business and focused on getting to the restroom and back before the break ended. But something in the tone made me pause. There was an urgency, a threatening edge that didn't belong in a business hotel hosting a legitimate economic summit. Il denaro deve essere trasferito entro mezzanotte, a man's voice said, low and dangerous. The money must be transferred by midnight. Altrimenti il giudice e sua famiglia pagheranno il prezzo. Otherwise, the judge and his family will pay the price. My blood ran cold. I froze in the hallway, my heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. This wasn't business talk. This was something else entirely. Something criminal. Petrova sta diventando un problema, another voice responded, this one rougher, older. Petrova is becoming a problem. Forse è tempo di eliminare il problema in modo permanente. Perhaps it's time to eliminate the problem permanently. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to get as far away as possible, but my feet wouldn't move. I stood rooted to the spot, professional curiosity warring with primal fear. Who was Petrova? What judge? What was happening in this sterile, respectable hotel that catered to business executives and conference attendees? Russo vuole farlo sembrare naturale, the first voice continued. Russo wants to make it look natural. Nessuna traccia che porti a noi. No trace leading back to us, Russo. The name detonated in my mind like a bomb. Everyone who worked in international circles had heard whispers about the Russo family. A powerful dynasty with legitimate business holdings stretching across 3 continents, but with persistent rumors of less legitimate enterprises. Money laundering, political corruption, worse. I'd translated for enough corporate events to know how to read between lines, how to catch the things people thought were hidden in foreign languages. But this was something I was never supposed to hear. My phone buzzed in my pocket and I nearly dropped my water bottle. The sudden sound felt deafening in the quiet corridor. My hands shook as I pulled it out. A text from the conference coordinator. Break over in 2 minutes. Need you back. I had to move. Had to get back to the conference hall and pretend I hadn't heard anything. I took a step backward, trying to be silent, but my heel caught on the edge of the carpet runner. The water bottle slipped from my nervous fingers, hitting the marble floor with a hollow plastic thud that echoed through the corridor like a gunshot. The voices inside the room stopped instantly. Time seemed to slow as I watched the door swing fully open. A man emerged, tall and broad-shouldered in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. His face was all sharp angles, high cheekbones, and a jaw that looked carved from granite. Dark hair swept back from a high forehead, and eyes, cold, calculating eyes the color of slate, fixed on me with laser focus. Mi scusi, I stammered, my Italian suddenly clumsy on my tongue despite years of fluency. Excuse me, I was just looking for the restroom. He studied me for a long moment and I felt stripped bare under that gaze. Like he could see every thought, every fear, every word I'd just overheard. Another man appeared behind him, older, with silver threaded through his dark hair and a scar running from his left temple to his jaw. Parli Italiano? The first man asked, his voice smooth as silk over steel. You speak Italian? Un po', I lied, trying to downplay my fluency. A little, just basic phrases. For work. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those cold eyes. Disbelief. Recognition that I was lying. He took a step toward me, and every muscle in my body tensed, preparing to run. "What's your name?" he asked, switching to English. His accent was subtle but present, cultured and educated. "I should get back," I said instead of answering, bending to retrieve my water bottle with trembling hands. "My break is over." I turned to walk away, trying to keep my pace measured and calm when everything in me wanted to sprint. I made it 5 steps before his voice stopped me cold. "Signorina." "Miss." I turned slowly, my heart in my throat. He stood in the center of the corridor now, hands in his pockets, the picture of casual authority. But there was nothing casual about the way he looked at me, like a predator who just identified prey. "The restroom is that way," he said, pointing in the opposite direction I'd been heading. His lips curved into something that might have been a smile on anyone else. On him, it looked dangerous. Unless you weren't really looking for it. Panic surged through me. "Thank you," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. I forced myself to walk to the restroom he'd indicated, feeling his eyes burning into my back with every step. My hands shook so badly I could barely turn the door handle. Once inside, I leaned against the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My face was pale, green eyes too wide, copper hair escaping from the professional bun I'd pinned it in that morning. What had I done? What had I walked into? I splashed cold water on my face, trying to calm down, trying to think rationally. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just business talk that sounded more sinister than it was. Maybe Russo was a common name and had nothing to do with the Russo family. But even as I tried to rationalize, I knew better. The way those men had looked at me, the immediate silence when they'd heard me in the corridor, the thinly veiled threat in the tall man's voice when he'd questioned me. I'd stumbled into something dangerous. I had to get through the rest of the day. Had to finish my translation work, collect my payment, and get out of this hotel. Then I'd forget everything I'd heard. Pretend it never happened. The conference coordinator was waiting when I returned to the main hall, tapping her watch impatiently. "You're late. The French delegation is asking for you." I slipped back into my role, my professional mask firmly in place. For the next 3 hours, I translated discussions about market trends and economic forecasts, smiled politely at delegates, and tried desperately to focus on anything except the conversation I'd overheard. But I could feel him watching me. At first, I thought it was paranoia. My mind playing tricks after the corridor encounter. Then I caught a glimpse of charcoal suit in my peripheral vision. He was standing at the back of the conference hall, partially hidden behind a column, those slate eyes fixed on me with unnerving intensity. My voice faltered mid-sentence. The French executive I was translating for frowned slightly, and I quickly recovered, stumbling through the rest of his speech. But my hands were shaking again, and sweat prickled along my hairline despite the aggressive air conditioning. When the session finally ended at 8:01 p.m., I gathered my materials with hurried efficiency. I needed to get my payment from the conference office and leave. My apartment in Brooklyn had never seemed more appealing. Small, cramped, with water stains on the ceiling and neighbors who fought at 2 a.m., but it was safe. It was mine, and it was far away from here. "Excuse me, Miss Shaw?" I jumped at the voice behind me, spinning around to find a young woman in hotel uniform holding an envelope. "Yes?" My voice came out too high, too nervous. "Payment for your translation services today." She handed me the envelope with a professional smile. "The conference coordinator also wanted me to give you this." She produced a second envelope, this one heavier, made of expensive cream-colored paper with my name written across the front in elegant script. My stomach dropped. "What is this?" I asked. The woman shrugged. "A gentleman asked me to deliver it, said it was important." She walked away before I could ask which gentleman, leaving me standing in the emptying conference hall holding 2 envelopes, my payment in one hand, and something unknown and potentially dangerous in the other. I should have thrown it away, should have walked straight out of the hotel without opening it. Instead, with trembling fingers, I broke the wax seal and extracted a single card. The handwriting was the same elegant script as the envelope. "Miss Shaw, I believe we have matters to discuss. Suite 24 Sept. Come alone. You have 15 minutes before I come find you. Di Russo." The elevator ride to the 24th floor felt like descending into hell, except I was going up. My reflection stared back at me from the polished brass doors. A stranger with wide eyes and skin too pale beneath the harsh lighting. The card felt like it was burning a hole through my blazer pocket where I'd tucked it after reading it 3 times, hoping the words would somehow change. 15 minutes. He'd given me 15 minutes before he came looking for me. I'd already wasted 7 of them standing frozen in the conference hall, debating whether to run. But where would I go? He knew my name. Knew I worked as a translator. If someone like Domenico Russo, and I was certain now that's who he was, wanted to find me, my tiny Brooklyn apartment wouldn't keep me safe. The locks I'd installed after moving in last year suddenly seemed laughably inadequate. The elevator chimed softly, announcing the 24th floor. The doors slid open to reveal a corridor vastly different from the lower floors. Here, the carpeting was plush and silent beneath my feet, the walls adorned with original artwork that probably cost more than my entire year's salary. Sconces cast warm, golden light that somehow made the space feel both luxurious and menacing. Suite 2407 sat at the end of the corridor, its double doors imposing and elegant. I stood before them, my hand raised to knock, frozen in indecision for the 100th time. Every rational cell in my brain screamed at me to turn around, to take the stairs down to the lobby and disappear into the New York night, to catch a bus to anywhere that wasn't here. But I'd heard too much. And men like Domenico Russo didn't make idle threats. If he said he'd come find me, he would. Better to face him now, in a public hotel, than wait for him to show up at my apartment at 3 a.m. I knocked twice, the sound seeming to echo forever in the quiet corridor. Enter. His voice came from within, that same smooth command I'd heard in the hallway hours ago. My hand trembled as I turned the handle and pushed open the door. The suite beyond was enormous, easily 3 times the size of my entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the glittering Manhattan skyline, the city spread out like scattered diamonds against black velvet. The furnishings were elegant and modern, all clean lines and expensive fabrics in shades of cream and charcoal. Domenico Russo stood by the windows, his back to me, hands clasped behind him as he surveyed his kingdom below. He'd removed his suit jacket, revealing a crisp white shirt that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean frame. Even in silhouette, he radiated power and control. "Close the door," he said without turning around. I hesitated, every instinct warning me not to trap myself in a room with this man, but my hand moved of its own accord, pushing the door shut with a soft click that sounded final, irrevocable. "Come here." It wasn't a request. I forced my feet to move across the plush carpet, stopping a careful distance away from him, close enough to hear, far enough to run if necessary, though I suspected running wouldn't help me now. He turned slowly, and for the first time, I saw him clearly in proper lighting. He was younger than I'd initially thought, perhaps 35, though his eyes held the weariness of someone who'd seen far too much. Sharp cheekbones cast shadows across his face, and his jaw was darkened by 5 o'clock shadow that somehow made him look even more dangerous. But it was his eyes that captured me, the same slate gray I'd noticed in the corridor, but now I could see flecks of darker charcoal within them, like storm clouds gathering. "Miss Shaw," he said, my name sounding different in his accented voice, more intimate somehow. "Or may I call you Natalie?" Hearing my first name from his lips sent a chill down my spine. "How did you know your full name?" He moved to a bar cart positioned near the windows, pouring amber liquid into 2 crystal glasses. "Your conference badge had your first name. The rest was simple research." He held out one of the glasses to me. "Scotch. You look like you need it." I didn't take it. "I should go. I don't know what you think I heard, but don't insult my intelligence by lying." His voice remained calm, almost pleasant, which somehow made it more threatening. "You speak fluent Italian. Your conference bio lists it as one of your 6 languages, along with French, Spanish, German, Portuguese, and Mandarin. Quite impressive for someone only 27 years old." My throat went dry. He'd researched me, thoroughly. "I heard you in the corridor," he continued, setting both glasses down and moving closer. I fought the urge to step back. "The way you froze, the panic in your eyes when you saw me. You understood every word we said. I didn't, please." He raised a hand, silencing me. "We both know the truth. The question now is what to do about it." Fear spiked through me, sharp and acidic. "Are you going to kill me?" Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, or amusement? If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't have made it to the elevator. The casual way he said it made my knees weak. I reached out to steady myself against the back of a nearby chair, my fingers digging into the expensive fabric. Then what do you want? I managed. He studied me for a long moment, his gaze traveling over my face with unsettling intensity. I felt exposed under that scrutiny, like he was cataloging every detail, every fear, every desperate thought racing through my mind. Sit, he said finally, gesturing to the chair I was already clinging to. I'd rather stand. It wasn't a request, Natalie. The use of my first name, combined with the steel beneath his polite tone, made me sink into the chair. He took a seat across from me, leaning back with casual grace that belied the danger he represented. You heard a private conversation, he began, steepling his fingers beneath his chin. A conversation about matters that could be problematic if shared with the wrong people. I won't tell anyone, I said quickly. I'll forget I heard anything. I just want to go home and what? He interrupted. Pretend this never happened? Return to your life translating corporate speeches and living in your small apartment in Prospect Heights? He tilted his head. Yes, I know where you live. 3rd floor, corner unit, with the fire escape outside your bedroom window that you should really get fixed. The lock is broken. Ice flooded my veins. He'd been to my apartment, or had someone watching it. The thought of him or his men knowing where I slept, where I was vulnerable, made bile rise in my throat. What do you want from me? I whispered. I want to offer you a job. Of all the things I'd expected him to say, that wasn't one of them. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. A job? You're talented, he said, as if we were discussing something mundane like the weather. 6 languages, all fluent. A degree from Boston University in Linguistics and International Relations. You graduated summa cum laude. Worked for the UN briefly before taking freelance translation work. He paused. You're also in debt. Student loans totaling $87,000. Medical bills from your mother's cancer treatment last year. $43,000. You work 3 different translation contracts to stay afloat and still barely make rent each month. My face burned with humiliation. He knew everything. Had dissected my life like a specimen under glass. I don't need your pity, I said, trying to inject strength into my voice. I'm not offering pity. I'm offering employment. He leaned forward slightly. I have various business interests that require someone with your linguistic skills. Someone discreet. Someone who understands that certain conversations should remain private. You mean someone you can control? I shot back. Someone who heard too much and now has to work for you or face consequences. That ghost of a smile returned. I prefer to think of it as mutually beneficial. You need money. I need a translator I can trust, or at least one I can monitor. And if I refuse, the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Domenico's expression didn't change, but something hardened in his eyes. I don't think you want to refuse, Natalie. Not when refusal would raise questions about your mother's medical care at Lenox Hill Hospital. Such expensive treatment. It would be a shame if insurance complications arose. My hands clenched into fists. You wouldn't. I wouldn't want to, he corrected. But I also can't have someone walking around with knowledge of my private affairs. So you have 2 choices. Work for me, under my protection and supervision, or face the consequences of refusing. He stood, moving to the windows again. I'll be honest with you, because I value honesty in my employees. The conversation you overheard involved sensitive business matters. People who know about those matters become liabilities. I eliminate liabilities. The threat hung in the air between us, crystal clear despite his pleasant tone. You're blackmailing me, I said numbly. I'm offering you employment with excellent benefits, he countered. Salary of $200,000 per year, health insurance for you and your mother, immediate payment of all outstanding debts. He glanced over his shoulder at me. All I require is your loyalty and discretion, $200,000. The number made my head spin. That was more than double what I made now, struggling through multiple contracts. And my mother's medical bills gone, her insurance secured. No more lying awake at 3 a.m., calculating how to make rent and still afford her medication. But it would mean selling my soul to a man who casually discussed eliminating problems permanently. Who knew where I lived and could threaten my mother's care with a single phone call? What kind of translation work? I heard myself ask, hating the surrender in my voice. He turned back to face me fully, satisfaction evident in his expression. Various business meetings, some international travel, occasional document translation. Nothing you're not already qualified to do. And the other part? The part where you eliminate problems? You'll never be asked to participate in anything illegal, he said smoothly. You'll simply translate. What happens with that information afterward is not your concern. It was a lie. We both knew it. The moment I accepted his offer, I'd become complicit in whatever he did. Every conversation I translated, every document I worked on, would make me part of his world. Part of whatever darkness he operated in. I need time to think, I said desperately. You have until midnight tonight. He checked his watch, a platinum piece that probably cost more than my car. That gives you approximately 4 hours. After that, my offer expires, and we move to less pleasant alternatives. I stood on shaky legs, needing to escape this suite and his overwhelming presence, needing space to breathe and think clearly. One more thing, he said as I reached the door. Don't consider running. I have people watching your apartment, your mother's hospital, and every exit from this city. There's nowhere you can go that I can't find you. I turned back, anger finally cutting through the fear. You're a monster. His expression didn't change. Yes, he agreed simply. But I'm a monster who's offering you a way out of poverty and into security. Think carefully about which choice serves you better. I fled the suite, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall until I was safely in the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of him still standing by those massive windows, silhouetted against the glittering city like a king surveying his domain. And I realized with sinking certainty that I'd already made my choice. I'd made it the moment I heard that conversation in the corridor, the moment I froze instead of walking away, the moment fate or bad luck or cruel coincidence had put me in the path of Domenico Russo. My old life, the one where I struggled but was free, was over. And whatever came next would be lived in the shadow of a man who eliminated problems and called it business. The elevator doors opened in the lobby, releasing me into the still bustling hotel. People moved around me, oblivious to the fact that my entire world had just been dismantled and reconstructed in the span of one conversation. I walked out into the Manhattan night, the October air sharp against my flushed skin. I had 4 hours to decide my future, but deep down, beneath the fear and anger and desperation, I knew there was only one choice I could make. The question wasn't whether I'd accept Domenico Russo's offer. It was whether I'd survive what came after. I didn't go home. Couldn't face the empty walls of my apartment, knowing Domenico's men were watching, cataloging my movements like a specimen under observation. Instead, I walked, block after block through Manhattan's glittering streets, my heels clicking against pavement still warm from the day's heat, my mind racing faster than my feet could carry me. The city pulsed with Friday night energy. Couples laughed over dinner through restaurant windows. Groups of friends spilled out of bars, their voices loud and careless. I envied their normalcy, their uncomplicated lives where the biggest worry was whether to get another drink or call it a night. My phone buzzed. Mom's name lit up the screen, and guilt stabbed through me sharp as a knife. Hey, sweetheart. Her voice came through, thin but warm. How was the conference? I stopped walking, pressing my back against a brick building, suddenly unable to form words around the lump in my throat. She sounded tired. The new medication made her exhausted, but at least it was keeping the cancer at bay. At least for now. It was fine, I managed. Long day. How are you feeling? Oh, you know me. Tough as nails. She laughed, but it turned into a cough that lasted too long. When she recovered, her voice had that forced brightness I'd learned to recognize. Listen, honey, I got a call from the hospital today about the bills. They're saying insurance might not cover next month's treatment and... Don't worry about it, I interrupted, my decision crystallizing in that moment, like ice forming over water. I'm handling it. I got a new contract today. Really good money. The lie tasted bitter, but what was one more lie when my entire life was about to become a carefully constructed fiction? Natalie, you don't have to. I want to, Mom. Please, let me take care of this. We talked for a few more minutes, her telling me about the book club at the hospital, and the terrible cafeteria food. Normal things, safe things. I clung to her voice like a lifeline. This connection to the person I'd been before I walked into that hotel corridor and heard words that changed everything. After we hung up, I checked the time. 10:47 p.m., 1 hour and 13 minutes until midnight. Until Domenico Russo's deadline expired, and whatever protection his job offer provided vanished with it. I pulled out the business card he'd pressed into my hand as I left his suite. Heavy cream cardstock with just a phone number embossed in black. No name, no title. Nothing to identify the owner. The calling card of a man who didn't need introduction. My thumb hovered over the digits. Once I made this call, there was no going back. No pretending I'd misunderstood or could somehow slip away unnoticed. I'd be choosing to enter his world, to become part of whatever darkness he operated within. But I'd also be choosing to save my mother. To give her the treatment she needed without bankrupting us both. To maybe, finally, stop drowning in debt and fear. I dialed before I could change my mind. He answered on the first ring. I was beginning to think you'd make me wait until the last minute. I accept, I said, the words coming out steadier than I felt. Your offer. I accept. Silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then, good. I'll send a car to your location in 10 minutes. We have paperwork to finalize. Now, it's almost 11 o'clock. I'm a night person, Natalie. You'll learn to be one too. I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Don't move from where you're standing. The car will find you. He hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone, reality crashing over me in waves. I'd just agreed to work for a man who'd threatened my mother, who'd researched every detail of my life, who discussed eliminating problems like other people discussed the weather. What had I done? The black Mercedes pulled up exactly 10 minutes later. So sleek and expensive it looked out of place even in Manhattan. The back window rolled down, revealing not Domenico but the older man I'd seen with him in the corridor. Silver threaded through his dark hair, that scar running from temple to jaw giving him the look of an aging warrior. Miss Shaw, he said, his accent thicker than Domenico's. I'm Marco. Please, get in. Every thriller movie I'd ever watched flashed through my mind. Getting into cars with strange men never ended well. But I was past the point of safe choices. I'd crossed that line the moment I accepted Domenico's offer. The interior smelled of leather and expensive cologne. Marco sat across from me, his hands folded calmly in his lap, his dark eyes assessing without judgment. You made the right choice, he said, as the car pulled smoothly into traffic. Did I have a choice? Something that might have been sympathy flickered across his face. There's always a choice, Miss Shaw. The question is whether you can live with the consequences of choosing wrong. He pulled out a tablet, tapping the screen. I need you to read and sign these documents. Standard employment contract, non-disclosure agreement, and acknowledgement of confidentiality requirements. I took the tablet, scanning the contracts with growing dread. The salary was there, $200,000 as promised, health benefits, immediate debt payment. But buried in the legal language were clauses that made my blood run cold. Termination of employment only at employer discretion. Mandatory relocation if deemed necessary for security. Acknowledgement that breach of confidentiality would result in legal action and financial penalties. Financial penalties. That was corporate speak for something much darker, and we both knew it. What happens if I break the confidentiality clause? I asked. Marco's expression didn't change. Don't break it, I signed. What else could I do? Each signature felt like selling another piece of my soul, but maybe souls were overrated when your mother needed medication and you hadn't had a full night's sleep in 3 years. The car didn't take me home. Instead, we drove to a different hotel, even more upscale than the conference venue, the Peninsula. I'd walked past it 100 times, never imagining I'd step inside its gilt-edged doors. Marco led me through the opulent lobby to a private elevator that required a keycard to operate. We rose in silence to the top floor, my reflection staring back at me from mirrored walls. I looked pale and frightened, my copper hair disheveled from hours of walking, my blazer wrinkled. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse suite that made Domenico's earlier accommodations look modest. This was obscene wealth, the kind that most people only glimpsed in movies. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and windows that showcased Central Park like a painting. Domenico stood on the terrace, a phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. He glanced over as we entered, his expression unreadable, then returned to his conversation. I caught fragments. Something about a shipment, a meeting in Milan, confirmation of numbers that meant nothing to me. Yet. "Wait here," Marco instructed, gesturing to a seating area that probably cost more than my car. He disappeared through a doorway, leaving me alone with my thoughts and growing panic. What was I doing here? It was nearly midnight. I should be home, in bed, not standing in a penthouse with a man who scared me more than anyone I'd ever met. Domenico ended his call and stepped inside, sliding the glass door closed behind him. He'd changed clothes, now wearing dark slacks and a black shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle. Somehow the casual attire made him seem more dangerous, not less. "You signed the contracts," he said. "Statement, not question." "Yes." "Good." He moved to a bar area, pouring himself something amber. "Your debts will be cleared by Monday morning. Your mother's insurance approved for continued treatment. You'll receive your first paycheck next Friday, half deposited to your account, half held in escrow as insurance of your continued cooperation." Of course, he wasn't just buying my loyalty, he was making sure I couldn't run. Half my salary held hostage to my good behavior. "When do I start?" I asked, trying to inject professionalism into my voice. "You already have." He turned to face me fully. "Tomorrow you'll move into an apartment I've arranged in Tribeca. More secure than your current location. Marco will help you pack in the morning. Wait, I can't just move. I have a lease, belongings, the lease will be handled. Bring what matters, the rest will be replaced." His tone left no room for argument. "You work for me now, Natalie. That means I need to know where you are, who you talk to, what you do, for your safety as much as mine. You mean for your control. Call it what you want. The terms don't change." He set down his glass and walked closer, stopping just inside my personal space, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody that probably cost more per ounce than my monthly grocery budget. "I'm not an unreasonable man. Follow the rules. Do your job, and you'll be well compensated and protected. Cross me, and you'll wish you'd never heard Italian in your life." The threat was crystal clear despite his calm delivery. I met his eyes, refusing to look away even though everything in me wanted to. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me cower. "Are we clear?" he asked. "Perfectly." "Good." He stepped back and I could breathe again. "Marco will take you home. Pack a bag for tomorrow. Comfortable clothes, professional attire. We leave for Milan on Sunday." "Milan? You didn't mention travel in the contract." "I mentioned occasional international travel. Consider this occasional." He pulled his phone out again, already moving on to his next task. "You'll need a passport." "Do you have one?" "Yes, but nothing. We're attending a business meeting. You'll translate. That's your job." He glanced up, those slate eyes pinning me in place. "Unless you're having second thoughts." I wasn't stupid enough to admit the truth. No second thoughts." "Excellent. Marco will brief you on the meeting details tomorrow. Get some sleep. You look exhausted, dismissed. Like I was just another employee, another tool in his arsenal, which I suppose I was now." The realization sat heavy in my chest as Marco reappeared and gestured for me to follow. The car ride back to Brooklyn felt surreal. Marco remained silent, but I caught him watching me in the reflection of the window, his expression thoughtful. "You're wondering if you made a mistake," he said finally. I didn't bother denying it. "Wouldn't you?" "Probably." He shifted, leaning forward slightly. "But I'll tell you something, Miss Shaw. I've worked for Domenico for 15 years. In that time, I've seen him deal with countless problems, countless people who crossed him or got in his way." He paused. "He could have made you disappear. Could have solved his problem the easy way. The fact that he offered you employment instead tells me something." "What?" "That he saw value in you beyond just silence. Domenico doesn't waste resources. If he's investing in you, it's because he believes you're worth the investment." Marco sat back. "Don't prove him wrong." We pulled up outside my building, shabby and tired compared to the glittering Manhattan towers I'd just left. My apartment windows were dark, but I noticed a black SUV parked half a block down, its occupants barely visible through tinted glass. "They'll watch all night," Marco said, following my gaze. "For your protection. Or to make sure I don't run. Both can be true." He handed me a business card, different from Domenico's. This one had a name, Marco Castellano, and a phone number. "If you need anything, call. I'll be here at 8:01 a.m. to help you pack." I climbed out of the car, my legs shaky from exhaustion and stress. My building's door stuck as always, requiring 2 hard pulls before it gave way. The hallway smelled of someone's dinner, garlic and tomatoes, and old carpet. Home. For one more night. My apartment felt smaller than ever when I let myself in. I stood in the center of my tiny living room, taking in the secondhand furniture and the crack in the ceiling I'd been meaning to patch for months. This had been my sanctuary, my hard-won independence after Boston, after the relationship that had nearly broken me, after clawing my way to something that was mine. Now it was just a temporary stop on the way to something I couldn't yet comprehend. I packed mechanically, pulling clothes from my closet, gathering toiletries, packing the few photographs I couldn't bear to leave. My mother smiling before she got sick, my graduation photo, the picture of my father before he died when I was 12. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Sleep well. Tomorrow your new life begins. Dar Domenico Russo." Even his texts felt like commands. I didn't sleep well. I didn't sleep at all. I lay in my bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, watching shadows move across the wall as cars passed outside. The fire escape rattled in the wind. That broken lock Domenico had mentioned banging softly. He was right about that, as he seemed to be right about everything. I should have fixed it months ago, but I'd been too busy working, too stressed about money, too focused on survival to worry about maybes and what-ifs. Now the what-ifs had caught up with me, and survival meant something entirely different. It meant working for a man who operated in shadows, who made people disappear, who'd researched every vulnerability I had and weaponized them with surgical precision. Dawn crept through my window, painting everything in shades of gray. In a few hours, Marco would arrive. I'd pack up my life, what little of it fit in suitcases. I'd move to an apartment I'd never seen, in a neighborhood I'd only visited as a tourist. I'd become someone new. Someone who worked for Domenico Russo. Someone who translated conversations that could get people killed. Someone who'd sold her freedom for her mother's life and called it a good deal. The funny thing was, I'd do it again. Would make the same choice 100 times over if it meant my mother got to live. If it meant she didn't spend her final months, weeks, days worrying about bills and bankruptcy and leaving me with nothing but debt. Maybe that made me weak. Or maybe it made me human. I got up as the sun finally broke over the horizon, splashing gold across my shabby room. I made coffee in my ancient coffee maker, drank it standing at the window, watching my neighborhood wake up. The bodega owner across the street rolled up his gate. A mother walked past with a stroller. Normal people living normal lives. I was no longer one of them. And I never would be again. Marco arrived at exactly 8:00 a.m. as promised. I'd been ready for an hour, my belongings condensed into 3 suitcases and 2 boxes of things I couldn't bear to leave behind. Books mostly, and photo albums my mother had kept. The accumulated evidence of a life that was ending today. "This is everything?" Marco asked, surveying my packed belongings with something like surprise. "I travel light." I didn't mention that most of my furniture had come with the apartment, or that I'd never accumulated much after fleeing Boston 3 years ago. Possessions felt like anchors then, things that could weigh you down when you needed to run. How ironic that I was running again. Except this time toward danger instead of away from it. 2 of Marco's men, silent and efficient, carried my things down to the waiting SUV. I took one last look at the apartment that had sheltered me through my poorest, loneliest years. The kitchen where I'd learned to make meals for $2. The bathroom where I'd cried after particularly brutal translation shifts. The bedroom where I'd lain awake calculating impossible budgets. "Ready?" Marco asked gently. "No." Yes, the apartment in Tribeca stole my breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Hudson River, morning light pouring across hardwood floors that gleamed like honey. The furniture was modern and expensive, all clean lines and neutral tones. The kitchen had marble countertops and appliances I wasn't sure I knew how to operate. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a living space larger than my entire previous apartment. "It's too much," I whispered. "It's secure," Marco corrected. "Doorman downstairs, cameras on every floor, reinforced locks. Mr. Russo takes the safety of his employees seriously." He set my suitcases in the master bedroom, which featured a bed that could sleep 4 in a closet bigger than my old bedroom. "Unpack, get settled. I'll be back at 2:00 p.m. to brief you on the Milan meeting." "Marco," I called as he headed for the door. He turned, one eyebrow raised. "Why does he need me?" "Domenico speaks perfect English. His business associates probably do too. Why go through the trouble of hiring a translator?" Something shifted in Marco's expression. A flash of respect, maybe. "Because business conducted in English is transparent. Everyone understands, everyone hears. Business conducted in Italian, French, Mandarin, that creates layers. Privacy, control of information." He paused. "Mr. Russo's empire is built on knowing what others don't. You'll help him maintain that advantage." After he left, I wandered through the apartment like a ghost haunting someone else's life. I opened cabinets to find them stocked with expensive cookware. The refrigerator held basics: milk, eggs, fresh vegetables, and bread. Someone had prepared for my arrival with disturbing thoroughness. In the bathroom, luxury toiletries lined the counter. Designer brands I'd only seen in magazines. Plush towels hung from heated racks. The shower was large enough for 3 people. With multiple heads and controls, I'd need an instruction manual to understand. I unpacked mechanically, hanging my discount clothes in that massive closet where they looked pathetic and lost. My few books went on built-in shelves in the living room, surrounded by empty space that emphasized how little I owned. The photos of my mother and father found a home on the dresser in my new bedroom. My phone buzzed. Another text from Domenico's number. "How's the new place?" I stared at the message, unsettled by his timing. Was he watching somehow? Or just checking in on his investment? "It's fine," I typed back. "Thank you." 3 dots appeared then. "Don't thank me. You're earning it. See you tonight for dinner. 7 p.m. Marco will bring you. Dinner. With Domenico." The thought sent anxiety spiking through my chest. I'd hoped for time to adjust, to process everything before facing him again, but apparently I was on his schedule now. My time, my choices, all belonged to him. I spent the afternoon trying to distract myself. I researched Milan, reading about the city I'd be visiting for the first time. I practiced my Italian, running through business phrases and formal vocabulary. I tried on different outfits for dinner, finally settling on a simple black dress that seemed appropriate without being too formal. Marco returned at 2 p.m. exactly, carrying a leather folder thick with documents. "The Milan meeting," he began, settling into the living room couch while I took the chair across from him. "Mr. Russo is negotiating a partnership with the Lombardi family. Import-export, primarily textiles and luxury goods." "Primarily?" I caught the word. "The Lombardis have other interests, as does Mr. Russo. Your job is to translate only what's said in the meeting. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't interpret. Don't add context. Don't offer opinions. Just words." His dark eyes held mine. "And what you hear stays confidential. Always." The contract covered that pretty clearly. The contract is a formality. I'm telling you this for your own safety. He pulled out a photo from the folder, sliding it across the coffee table. A man in his 50s, silver-haired and distinguished, smiled from what looked like a corporate headshot. Antonio Lombardi. Charming, educated, ruthless. He'll try to engage you in conversation, make you feel comfortable. Don't let him. Why not? Because he'll be testing you, seeing if you're loyal to Domenico, or if you can be turned. Marco produced another photo, this one of a younger man with cold eyes and a cruel mouth. "His son Luca. Avoid him entirely. He has a reputation with women, and not a good one." The warning made my skin crawl. I studied the photos, memorizing faces, trying to prepare for dangers I couldn't fully understand. "What exactly does Domenico do?" I asked. "His real business, not the corporate facade." Marco was silent for a long moment. "That's not a question you want answered, Miss Shaw." "But I'm already involved. I signed the contracts. I'm moving to Milan for a meeting. Don't I deserve to know what I'm part of? Knowing makes you complicit. Ignorance offers some protection." He began gathering the photos. Take my advice. Do your job, take your pay, and don't ask questions that could get you hurt. But I couldn't let it go. The conversation I overheard. About the judge and Petrova. What happened to them? Marco's expression went cold. Nothing you need to concern yourself with. Those problems were resolved. Such a clinical word for whatever dark fate had befallen those people. I thought of the judge. Probably someone with a family, with a life that ended because he got in Domenico's way. I thought of Petrova, whoever they were, eliminated like an error in a ledger. And I was helping him now. Facilitating his business, making his communications easier, enabling whatever he did in the shadows. I see you're having doubts, Marco observed. Wouldn't you? I had mine 15 years ago when Domenico pulled me out of a situation that would have killed me. I decided loyalty to him was better than whatever alternative I faced. He stood, preparing to leave. You'll face that same choice repeatedly, Miss Shaw. Every time you translate, every time you hear something you wish you hadn't. Choose loyalty. It's safer. After he left, I sat in my expensive new apartment with its river views and designer furniture, feeling more trapped than I ever had in my cramped Brooklyn walk-up. At least there, I'd been poor but free. Here I was comfortable but owned. I dressed for dinner with shaking hands. The black dress fit well. Professional without being provocative. I applied minimal makeup, not wanting to appear like I was trying too hard. My copper hair I pulled back in a low bun, sleek and controlled. Marco collected me at 6:45 p.m., his expression approving when he saw me. Perfect. Elegant but understated. Mr. Russo will be pleased. The restaurant was exclusive, the kind of place that didn't have prices on the menu, because if you needed to ask, you couldn't afford it. The maitre d' recognized Marco immediately, leading us through the main dining room to a private area and back. Domenico sat alone at a table set for two, candlelight casting shadows across his sharp features. He dressed in a dark suit, crisp white shirt open at the collar, no tie. He looked up as I approached, and something flickered in his slate eyes. Appreciation, maybe, or calculation. Natalie. He stood, the gesture oddly courteous from a man who'd threatened my mother. You look lovely. Thank you. I took the seat Marco pulled out for me, acutely aware of Domenico's gaze tracking my every movement. Wine? Domenico gestured to the bottle already open, something red and expensive. Water is fine. Afraid I'll get you drunk and extract secrets? His lips curved into that dangerous smile. I don't need alcohol for that. I'm very skilled at getting what I want. The waiter appeared, saving me from responding. Domenico ordered for both of us in flawless Italian, his accent Roman, I realized. Not Milanese like Marco's. The choices he made showed sophistication. Seasonal vegetables, fresh pasta, delicate fish. Nothing heavy, nothing that would make me sleepy or uncomfortable. You're analyzing my food choices, he observed once the waiter departed, wondering what they reveal about me. You're observant. It's how I've survived this long. He leaned back, studying me with unnerving intensity. Tell me about your father. The question caught me off guard. What? Your father. Marco's research says he died when you were 12. Heart attack. I'm curious about him. Why? Suspicion sharpened my voice. Because I want to understand what shaped you, who you are beneath the fear and resentment. He swirled wine in his glass. You could have run today, could have disappeared while Marco was helping you move. But you stayed. That suggests loyalty or fear or both. Maybe I just want my mother to live. That's part of it. But there's something else. He set down his glass. Your father was a translator too. Worked for the State Department. He taught you Italian when you were 5, French at 7. He died suddenly, left your mother with nothing. You were smart enough for scholarships, but still graduated with crushing debt because your mother got sick sophomore year. You've been struggling ever since, working yourself to exhaustion trying to save someone who's already dying. His words hit like physical blows. Don't talk about my mother like that. I'm not being cruel. I'm being honest. His expression softened slightly. She has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The treatment I'm funding will buy her time. Maybe a year if she's lucky. But it won't save her, Natalie. Nothing will. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. That year matters. Every day with her matters. I know. And he sounded like he actually meant it. My mother died when I was 17. Cancer too. I'd give anything for one more year with her. The confession surprised me, humanized him in a way I didn't want. It was easier to hate him as a monster than to see him as someone who'd also lost, who'd also watched someone he loved waste away. Is that why you're doing this? I asked. Helping me with her treatment? Because of your mother? Partly. Also because I need you compliant and focused, and you can't be either if you're drowning in medical debt and grief. He paused as our food arrived, waiting until the waiter departed before continuing. I'm not a good man, Natalie. I won't pretend otherwise. But I take care of the people who work for me. Loyalty runs both ways, unless they become problems. Then you eliminate them, yes. No hesitation, no apology. That's the reality of my world. You're in it now, which means you need to understand the rules. Follow them, and you'll be protected, compensated, and safe. Break them, and there will be consequences. I pushed food around my plate, appetite gone. How do you live with it, knowing people die because of decisions you make? By remembering that this world existed long before me and will continue long after. I didn't create the darkness, Natalie. I just learned to navigate it. He cut his fish with precise movements. You'll learn too. It gets easier. I don't want it to get easier. I don't want to become someone who's comfortable with this. Then you'll struggle. He met my eyes across the table. But you'll survive. And sometimes survival is enough. We ate in tense silence, the weight of unspoken things pressing down between us. Finally, Domenico spoke again, his tone more businesslike. The Milan meeting is Monday. We fly out Sunday afternoon. Pack for a week, business professional attire. I'll have Marco send you a detailed briefing tomorrow. He paused. Do you have questions about expectations? Just translate? Nothing else? Nothing else. You'll stand slightly behind and to my right. Translate conversations as they happen. Maintain professional demeanor at all times. His eyes hardened. And Natalie, if Antonio or Luca Lombardi attempt to engage you privately, you decline. Politely but firmly. Understood? Why would they? Because they'll want to know if you can be turned. If you're truly loyal to me, or if you're vulnerable to outside influence. He leaned forward. You're not just my translator. You're a reflection of my organization. Any weakness you show is a weakness in me. The pressure of that responsibility settled over my shoulders like a physical weight. I wasn't just responsible for my own safety anymore. I was representing him. His power. His control. I understand, I said quietly. Good. He signaled for the check, which appeared and disappeared without me seeing a total. Marco will take you home. Get rest. Sunday will be a long day. I stood, relieved to escape his intense presence, but as I turned to leave, his voice stopped me. Natalie. I looked back. His expression was unreadable, shadows and candlelight playing across his features. You made the right choice. I know it doesn't feel that way now, but in time you'll see. I didn't respond. Couldn't, because I wasn't sure he was right. Wasn't sure there was a right choice in situations like this. Only varying shades of wrong. Marco drove me back to Tribeca in silence, seeming to sense my need for quiet. The apartment felt empty when I let myself in, all that space and luxury somehow emphasizing my isolation. I stood at the windows, looking out over the Hudson, watching lights reflect on dark water. Somewhere out there, my mother slept in her hospital room, unaware that her daughter had sold her soul to pay for her care. Unaware that the money keeping her alive came from a man who made people disappear. Would she approve? Would she understand? Or would she be horrified by the choice I'd made? I'd never know, because I could never tell her. Just like I could never tell anyone what I'd heard that day in the corridor, what I was doing now, who I'd become. Domenico was right about one thing. I was in his world now. And there was no going back. Sunday arrived too quickly. I'd spent Saturday in a haze of preparation, reviewing Italian business terminology until the words blurred together, researching the Lombardi family through carefully worded searches that wouldn't raise flags, and trying on every piece of professional clothing I owned. None of it felt adequate. Marco arrived at noon with garment bags draped over his arm and a knowing smile. Mr. Russo thought you might need appropriate attire for Milan. Inside the bags were outfits that probably cost more than 6 months of my old rent. Tailored blazers in charcoal and navy, silk blouses in cream and dove gray, pencil skirts that would fit perfectly, designer shoes with red soles I recognized from magazine spreads. Even the undergarments were luxury brands, everything chosen with impeccable taste. "I can't accept these," I protested weakly. "You already did when you signed the contract. Professional attire is provided." Marco hung the bags in my closet with careful precision. "Mr. Russo has specific expectations about presentation. You represent him now." Right. I was a reflection of his power, his control. Another possession to be dressed appropriately and displayed as evidence of his wealth. The private jet waiting at Teterboro Airport made the hotel suite seem modest. All cream leather and polished wood, with seats that reclined into beds and a crew that materialized the moment anyone needed anything. Domenico was already aboard when Marco and I arrived, seated at a table covered in documents, his attention focused on a laptop screen. "Natalie." He glanced up briefly, his slate eyes sweeping over me in assessment. I'd worn one of the new outfits, a navy suit with a cream blouse, my copper hair pulled back severely. His slight nod suggested approval. "We'll go over the meeting parameters during the flight. Make yourself comfortable." Comfortable seemed impossible at 30,000 feet, trapped in luxury with a man who owned me. But I took a seat across from him, accepting espresso from the flight attendant, trying to project calm professionalism while my stomach churned. Once we reached cruising altitude, Domenico closed his laptop and gave me his full attention. The intensity of his focus was unnerving, like standing in a spotlight with nowhere to hide. "Antonio Lombardi has controlled Milan's import-export sector for 30 years, he began, sliding a folder across the table. "Legitimate business on the surface, but his real profit comes from moving goods that aren't listed on customs forms. Art, antiquities, certain pharmaceuticals. He's careful, connected, and extremely paranoid." I opened the folder, finding detailed dossiers on the Lombardi family. Antonio with his distinguished silver hair and grandfather smile. His son Luca, handsome in a cruel way, with eyes that held nothing warm. His daughter Sophia, who apparently ran the legitimate side of operations. Various associates, bodyguards, business partners. "Why does he want to partner with you?" I asked. "Because I control ports in New York and Miami that he needs access to, and because I have connections in Eastern Europe that would benefit his operations." Domenico leaned back, studying me. "This is a mutually beneficial arrangement, assuming we can agree on terms. And if you can't? Then we part professionally and find other solutions." His tone suggested those solutions might be less than peaceful. "Your role is simple. I'll speak in English during the main negotiations, establishing public positions. But there will be moments when Antonio and I switch to Italian, discussing things we don't want others to hear. That's when your skills become crucial. You'll translate those private exchanges for my later review, catching any nuances or implied threats I might miss in real time. You speak Italian fluently. Why do you need me to catch nuances?" Something flashed in his eyes. Appreciation, maybe, for my directness? Because when I'm negotiating, I'm focused on strategy, on reading body language and power dynamics. I need someone else listening purely to words, catching double meanings, or cultural references that might signal hidden agendas. He paused. "Antonio is Sicilian. They have ways of communicating threats that sound like pleasantries. I need you to identify those." The weight of that responsibility pressed down on me. I wasn't just translating words anymore. I was acting as his early warning system, identifying dangers hidden in polite conversation. "What if I miss something?" "You won't." Complete confidence in his voice. "Marco vetted you thoroughly. Your linguistic analysis thesis at BU focused on coded communication in Romance languages. You identified 12 distinct methods of conveying threats through seemingly innocent Italian phrases. That's exactly what I need." He'd read my thesis. Of course he had. He probably knew my work better than I remembered it myself. "There's something else," Domenico continued, his expression hardening slightly. "Luca will make advances toward you. It's his pattern with any attractive woman in his vicinity. You'll decline politely but firmly. Don't engage, don't flirt, don't give him any encouragement whatsoever. I'm not interested in... I know you're not. But Luca views women as conquests, and he's persistent." Domenico's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You're under my protection. Any insult to you is an insult to me. I need him to understand that immediately." The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened me, Instead, it stirred something complicated and unwelcome. He was claiming ownership, yes, but also offering protection. The lines felt dangerously blurred. We spent the next 4 hours reviewing scenarios, running through potential conversations and my expected responses. Domenico drilled me relentlessly, switching between languages, testing my speed and accuracy. By the time Milan appeared below us, glittering in late afternoon sun, I felt wrung out and over-caffeinated. The hotel was everything I'd expected from Domenico's standards. 5-star luxury in Milan's historic center. Our suites occupying an entire floor with views of the Duomo. My room connected to his through an interior door that I noticed had no lock on my side. Unpack and rest, Domenico instructed as bellhops delivered our luggage. We have dinner with the Lombardis at 8. Wear the black dress Marco included. Simple jewelry, professional hair and makeup. He disappeared into his suite before I could respond, leaving me alone in opulence that felt more like a gilded cage. I did as instructed, unpacking with mechanical efficiency, then showering in a bathroom larger than my old bedroom. The dress Marco had chosen was perfect, elegant and sophisticated without being overtly sexy. Designer black fabric that skimmed my curves and ended just above my knees. I was applying minimal makeup when the connecting door opened without warning. Domenico stepped through, now wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. His hair was slightly damp, slicked back from his forehead, and he smelled of expensive cologne and danger. "Good," he said, assessing my appearance with that calculating gaze. "You look exactly right. Professional, attractive, but not available." "I am available," I said before I could stop myself. "I'm not actually with you. In Milan, you are." He moved closer, and I fought the urge to step back. "To the Lombardis, to everyone we encounter, you're mine. My translator, under my protection, associated with my interests. That association keeps you safe. Understand?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He was standing too close, invading my space, with that overwhelming presence that seemed to fill every room he entered. One more thing. He reached into his pocket, extracting a small black box. Inside was a necklace, delicate gold chain with a small pendant. Not ostentatious, but clearly expensive. "Wear this. Domenico, you can and will. It's not a gift. It's a costume piece for the role you're playing." He moved behind me, and I felt his fingers brush my neck as he fastened the clasp. His touch was surprisingly gentle, at odds with everything else about him. "There. Perfect." I looked in the mirror, seeing us reflected together, him tall and powerful in his dark suit, radiating controlled menace. Me looking smaller somehow, despite my height and heels, the necklace sitting against my collarbone like a brand of ownership. "We should go," I said, needing distance from this moment. The restaurant was exclusive, naturally. Private dining room, security that looked like guests, and enough wealth concentrated in one space to fund a small country. Antonio Lombardi held court at the head of the table, laughing at someone's joke, playing the role of charming patriarch. He stood as we entered, arms spread in welcome. "Domenico. Finally, we meet in person." His Italian was Sicilian accented, warm and effusive. "And who is this lovely creature?" "My translator, Natalie Shaw." Domenico's hand settled on the small of my back, possessive and warning. "She'll be facilitating our discussions." Antonio's eyes traveled over me with uncomfortable thoroughness. "Bellissima. You have excellent taste, my friend." "In all things," Domenico replied smoothly. Luca appeared at his father's elbow, and I understood immediately why Marco had warned me. He was handsome in a predatory way, with dark eyes that stripped and assessed simultaneously. His smile held nothing kind. "Miss Shaw." He took my hand before I could prevent it, pressing his lips to my knuckles in a gesture that lingered too long. "A pleasure. I hope you'll sit next to me during dinner. I'm always eager to practice my English." "Miss Shaw sits with me," Domenico interjected, his tone pleasant but brooking no argument. "Shall we?" Dinner was a performance, everyone playing roles with perfect precision. Antonio, the charming host, discussing wine and art and Milanese culture. Domenico, the powerful guest, engaging politely while revealing nothing substantial. Luca, the seductive son, finding excuses to address comments to me despite Domenico's increasingly obvious disapproval. I translated when required, catching undercurrents in the Italian conversations that flowed around the English discussions. Antonio probing for weaknesses, testing boundaries through carefully worded compliments. Domenico deflecting with equal skill, establishing his position without direct confrontation. "Your translator is quite accomplished," Antonio observed in Italian, ostensibly to Domenico but loud enough for the table to hear. "Such linguistic gifts are rare. You must value her highly." "I value all my people appropriately," Domenico responded, also in Italian. The exchange seemed innocent, but I caught the real meaning. Antonio was asking if I could be bought. Domenico was saying no. "Perhaps Miss Shaw would enjoy seeing Milan's cultural sites," Luca suggested in English, his attention fixed on me. "I'd be happy to provide a personal tour tomorrow." "Miss Shaw's schedule is full," Domenico said before I could respond. His hand found my knee under the table, a gesture hidden from view but unmistakably possessive. "Perhaps another time." The message was clear. I was off limits. Luca's smile tightened, but he nodded acceptance. For now. The real negotiations began after dinner, when we moved to a private study. Antonio's daughter, Sophia, joined us, all business in her tailored suit, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She ran the legitimate operations, Marco had said, but she wasn't naive about the rest. They switched to Italian now, the pleasant social facade dropping away as they discussed territory, percentages, and terms. I translated in real time, keeping my voice neutral as they debated how to divide profits from operations I tried not to think too hard about. "The eastern routes are complicated," Antonio said, his tone harder now. "Petrova controlled them before his unfortunate accident. Now there's a vacuum, and various parties are attempting to fill it, violently." I kept my face neutral at the mention of Petrova, the name from the conversation I'd overheard. The problem that had been eliminated permanently. "I have connections in Prague and Warsaw," Domenico replied. "With your distribution network in Western Europe, we could establish control before the situation deteriorates further." They talked for hours, hammering out details while I translated and tried to ignore the implications. This was arms dealing, I realized. Or drug trafficking. Or both. Hidden beneath discussions of import-export and logistics were operations that destroyed lives, and I was facilitating them. Finally, near midnight, they reached preliminary agreements. Handshakes exchanged, promises made, with the understanding that lawyers would formalize everything later. Antonio walked us to the entrance, all warm goodbyes and plans for future dinners. "Your translator performed excellently," he said to Domenico in Italian. "So professional, so accurate, a valuable asset." "I'm aware of her value," Domenico responded, his hand settling possessively on my waist, "which is why I protect it carefully." In the car back to the hotel, silence stretched between us. Domenico stared out the window at Milan's nighttime streets, his expression unreadable. Finally he spoke. "You did well tonight. Better than I expected for your first negotiation." I translated words. That's all. "You did more than that. You caught the threat in Antonio's comment about Petrova. I saw your recognition." He turned to face me. "And you didn't react when Luca put his hand on your arm during dinner. Professional, despite provocation." I'd tried to forget that moment, Luca's fingers trailing down my forearm while he asked some innocuous question. The touch had made my skin crawl, but I'd smiled politely and stepped away. "I want to go home," I said quietly. "We have 3 more days of meetings. I mean after. I want to go back to New York and pretend this isn't my life now." "You can't pretend away reality, Natalie." His voice softened slightly. "But you can learn to navigate it. I'll teach you how. Back at the hotel, he walked me to my suite door, his presence overwhelming in the quiet corridor. Get rest. Tomorrow we tour Antonio's facilities, then dinner again. More performance, more translation. Will it always be like this? Playing roles, facilitating deals I don't want to understand? Yes. Brutal honesty. That's the job. That's what you agreed to. He turned to leave, but I caught his arm without thinking. He froze, looking down at my hand on his sleeve, then up to meet my eyes. What happens if I can't do this? I whispered. If it becomes too much? For a moment, something almost human flickered across his face. Then I'll help you carry the weight until you can. I don't abandon my people, Natalie. Remember that. He disappeared into his suite, leaving me alone with promises that felt like threats, and threats that sounded like protection. I locked my door, knowing it was futile since he controlled the connecting entrance, and lay awake staring at the ceiling. Somewhere in the city, Antonio Lombardi was probably celebrating his new partnership. Luca was likely planning how to corner me alone despite Domenico's warnings. And Domenico himself was on the other side of that unlocked door, a man who eliminated problems and called it business. And I was here, complicit in all of it, bought and paid for with my mother's life. The next 3 days in Milan blurred together, in an exhausting parade of meetings, dinners, and carefully staged performances. I translated conversations about shipments and territories, smiled politely while dodging Luca's increasingly bold advances, and tried not to think too deeply about what I was enabling. By Thursday morning, when we finally boarded Domenico's jet for the return flight, I felt hollowed out. Emotionally depleted in a way no amount of sleep could fix. You're quiet, Domenico observed once we reached cruising altitude. He'd been working on his laptop but now gave me his full attention, those slate eyes missing nothing. Just tired. It's more than that. He closed the computer. Talk to me. About what? How I spent 3 days helping you negotiate deals that probably get people killed? How I smiled and translated while men discussed human lives like they were commodities? The words spilled out before I could stop them. Weeks of suppressed emotion finally breaking through. Domenico's expression didn't change. Yes, tell me how that made you feel. Does it matter? I don't have a choice. You always have a choice, Natalie. You chose to accept my offer. You chose to get on this plane to Milan. You're choosing every moment to continue. He leaned forward slightly. I won't pretend your choices are easy or that the options are fair. But they're still choices. I looked away, unable to hold his intense gaze. My mother called yesterday. She said the new treatment is working, that she feels stronger. She was so happy, so grateful. My voice cracked. She has no idea what I did to give her that. Would you undo it? If you could go back to that corridor, walk past that door without hearing, would you? The question hung between us. I wanted to say yes, wanted to believe I'd choose differently. But the image of my mother's face, the relief in her voice, the possibility of one more year together, it made the answer complicated. I don't know, I whispered. At least you're honest. He stood, moving to the bar and pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. He pressed one into my hand despite my protest. Drink, it'll help. The whiskey burned going down, warming me from the inside. Domenico sat beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from him. My father was a difficult man, he said suddenly. Violent, controlling, built his empire on fear. When I was 17, I watched him beat my mother so badly she couldn't walk. 3 days later, she died from internal bleeding he'd caused. His voice remained steady, emotionless, like reciting facts from someone else's life. The official story was an aneurysm. Sudden, tragic, unavoidable. Everyone believed it because my father had power, connections, money. I turned to look at him, seeing past the controlled facade to something raw beneath. I'm sorry. Don't be. I killed him 6 months later. Made it look like a heart attack. He met my eyes, no apology in his expression. I was 17, and I murdered my father to take his empire and avenge my mother. That's who I am, Natalie. That's who you work for now. The confession should have terrified me. Instead, it explained so much about the man beside me. The control he demanded, the protection he offered, the brutal efficiency with which he eliminated threats. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand. This world doesn't allow for innocence or neutrality. You're either predator or prey, and I refuse to be prey ever again. He took my whiskey glass, setting it aside, then captured my chin gently, forcing me to meet his eyes. You're not prey either, Natalie. You're stronger than you think. These 3 days prove that. I don't feel strong. I feel compromised. Compromised implies you had purity to lose. None of us do. We're all just trying to survive, protect the people we love, find meaning in the choices we make. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, the gesture unexpectedly tender. Your mother is alive because of you. That matters more than anything else, does it? Even if people die because of what I help you do, people die regardless of our involvement. The question is whether we can live with our part in it. He released me, sitting back. I've made peace with who I am. You'll have to decide if you can make peace with who you're becoming. The rest of the flight passed in contemplative silence. I dozed fitfully, waking to find Domenico's jacket draped over me like a blanket. Him working quietly across the aisle, giving me space to process. Marco met us at Teterboro, his expression carefully neutral as he helped with luggage. Welcome back. Miss Shaw, I'll drive you home. Actually, Domenico interjected, she's coming with me. We have matters to discuss. I expected protest to rise up, but I was too exhausted to argue. I followed him to his car, letting the city lights blur past the windows as we drove through Manhattan to an address in the Upper East Side. The penthouse he led me to was stunning, all modern elegance and breathtaking views. Unlike his hotel suites, this felt personal. Books on shelves, art that looked collected rather than decorator chosen, photos in frames showing a dark-haired woman with Domenico's eyes. Your mother, I said, recognizing her from the photo I'd seen in research. Yes. He moved to the bar, pouring himself scotch. This was her favorite room. She'd sit by those windows for hours, reading, watching the city. I understood why he'd brought me here. This was trust, showing me something real beneath the dangerous facade. Permission to see him as human rather than monster. Why am I here, Domenico? Because in Milan you became more than just my translator. You became my partner in a way I didn't anticipate. He turned to face me fully. Antonio respects you. Sophia actually seemed to like you. Even Luca, despite his obvious interest, recognized you're not someone to underestimate. I just did my job. You did more. You navigated a dangerous situation with grace, caught threats I might have missed, and represented my interests perfectly. He set down his glass. I'm doubling your salary, effective immediately. $400,000 annually. The number stunned me. That's too much. It's what you're worth to me. Don't argue. He moved closer. But there are conditions. You'll travel with me regularly now. Milan was just the beginning. There are meetings in Prague, Singapore, São Paulo. I need someone I can trust at those negotiations. More performances. More translations that facilitate things I don't want to think about. Yes. But also more protection, more security for your mother, and more financial freedom than you've ever known. His hand came up, tucking a strand of copper hair behind my ear. You're mine now, Natalie. Not as possession, but as partnership. I protect what's mine absolutely. The possessiveness should have frightened me. Instead, exhaustion and emotion made me lean into his touch, craving comfort from the only person who understood the impossible position I occupied. I'm so tired, I whispered. Tired of being scared, tired of moral compromises, tired of not knowing who I am anymore. Then rest. He guided me to a leather sofa sitting beside me. You're safe here. Always. I don't know when I fell asleep, only that I woke hours later to find myself covered with a blanket, Domenico working quietly at his desk across the room. Morning light streamed through those massive windows, painting everything gold. What time is it? I asked, disoriented. 7. I have a meeting at 9, but Marco will take you home whenever you're ready. He stood, moving to sit on the coffee table facing me. How do you feel? Less fractured. It was true. Something about sleeping in his space, under his protection, had quieted the constant anxiety I'd carried for weeks. Thank you for not taking advantage. I'm many things, Natalie, but I don't prey on vulnerable women. His expression turned serious. What happened between us last night, showing you this place, it means something. You understand that? I nodded slowly, recognizing the shift that had occurred. We'd crossed some invisible line from employer-employee into something more complex. More dangerous. I should go, I said, standing. My mother's expecting a call. Domenico walked me to the door, his hand settling on my waist in that possessive gesture I was beginning to recognize. Dinner tonight. There's someone I want you to meet. Who? A friend. Someone who can teach you things I can't. He pressed a key into my palm. For here, in case you need somewhere safe. The key felt heavy, weighted with implications I wasn't ready to examine. I pocketed it anyway, knowing I'd probably use it eventually. Because Domenico was right about one thing. I was his now, bound by contracts and debts and choices that couldn't be unmade. Marco drove me back to Tribeca in comfortable silence. My apartment felt different somehow, less like a cage and more like a temporary refuge. I showered, changed, then called my mother. Sweetheart. Her voice was stronger than I'd heard in months. The doctors are amazed at my progress. They're talking about remission, can you believe it? Remission. The word sent tears streaming down my face. Worth it, I told myself. Everything I'd done, everything I'd become, was worth it for this moment. That's wonderful. Mom, I'm so happy for you. We talked for an hour, her sharing hospital gossip and treatment updates, me carefully editing my life to exclude anything that would worry her. When we finally hung up, I felt lighter despite everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Domenico. Car will collect you at 7. Wear something elegant but comfortable. Trust me, trust him. The man who'd threatened my mother, researched my entire life and pulled me into a world of moral ambiguity. The man who'd also saved her life, protected me in Milan, and shown me vulnerability few people probably ever saw. I was beginning to realize trust and fear weren't mutually exclusive. I could be terrified of Domenico Russo while simultaneously trusting him to keep his word, to protect me, to value me beyond my usefulness. That evening, I dressed in one of the outfits he'd provided, a deep emerald dress that brought out my eyes. I applied makeup carefully, styled my hair in loose waves, and admitted to myself that I wanted to look good for him. The admission felt like surrender. Marco collected me precisely at 7, driving us to a restaurant in Little Italy that looked unassuming from outside. But the moment we entered, I recognized this was no ordinary establishment. Security disguised as diners, deference from staff that went beyond excellent service, and at a private table in back, Domenico with an older woman who had his same slate eyes. Natalie, he stood, gesturing me forward. This is my Aunt Carmela. She raised me after my mother died. Carmela assessed me with shrewd intelligence, then smiled warmly. So you're the translator my nephew won't stop talking about. Sit, child. Let's get to know each other. The evening that followed was surreal. Carmela told stories about young Domenico, humanizing the dangerous man beside me. She asked about my family, my education, my life, with genuine interest that felt maternal. He needs someone like you, she said eventually, her English touched with Italian accent. Someone smart enough to challenge him, strong enough to survive his world, and good enough to remind him he's more than the darkness. Zia, Domenico warned softly. Hush, I'm allowed to meddle. She patted my hand. You're good for him, Natalie. And I think he's good for you too, even if neither of you wants to admit it yet. Later, after dinner, Domenico walked me to Marco's car. The night air was cool, carrying sounds of the city we both navigated so differently. Your aunt is lovely, I said. She's also right, about most things. He turned me to face him, hands settling on my shoulders. These past weeks, you've become essential to me. Not just as translator, but as someone I trust in a world where trust is currency. Domenico, let me finish. I know this isn't the life you would have chosen. I know I forced your hand, used your mother's illness as leverage, pulled you into situations you weren't prepared for. His grip tightened slightly, but I don't regret it. And I don't think you do either, not entirely. He was right, and the admission terrified me. What are we doing here? What is this becoming? Something complicated. Something that probably breaks a dozen boundaries in professional ethics. His thumb brushed across my collarbone, tracing the line of the necklace I still wore from Milan. But also something real. Maybe the only real thing in my life right now. Before I could respond, he kissed me. Gentle at first, questioning, giving me chance to pull away. When I didn't, when I instead gripped his jacket and pulled him closer, the kiss deepened into something desperate and claiming. We broke apart breathless, his forehead resting against mine. "This changes everything," I whispered. It was already changed. We're just acknowledging it now. He stepped back, his expression unreadable again. "Go home. Think about what you want. We'll talk tomorrow." Marco drove me back to Tribeca, but my mind stayed with Domenico, replaying that kiss, those words, the impossible situation we'd created. I stood at my windows overlooking the Hudson, the key to his penthouse burning a hole in my pocket. I'd translated a conversation by accident and lost my freedom. Been threatened and blackmailed into service, watched my morals compromise and my life reshape around a dangerous man's world. But I'd also saved my mother. Found protection and partnership. Discovered strength I didn't know I possessed. And maybe, terrifyingly, found something like love in the most unlikely place. My phone buzzed one final time. Domenico's message was simple. "Sleep well. Tomorrow we start planning Prague.